memorial and these ceremonies began 26 years ago on the 11th of May 1992. Our host officers are members of Mackay and District Military Museum wearing uniforms of the era. They will meet our special guests and accompany them to their seats. The parade commander is CUO Philip Phoebe from number 105 City of Mackay Squadron, Australian Air Force Cadets. The guard commander is CUO Brock Thomas from number 105 City of Mackay Squadron, Australian Air Force Cadets. The Tri-School Band is from Dundula, Central and Northview State Schools and lead the Australian and US national flags and US home state flags, followed by Air Force Cadets. Parade Commander, please march on the band, flags and number 105 City Mackay, Australian Air Force Cadets. Would you all please stand if you are able as the parade approaches? The Australian flag is carried by Judy Stewart, who has served in the Army Reserve. The US national flag is carried by Reed Switz. His father was an American soldier who flew in bombers, and his mother was a war bride. The state flags of our allies are carried by the students and citizens for the home states of the Lakers Creek casualties. The Tri-School Band is comprised of students from Dundula, Central and Northview State Schools, taught by Sue Benson, who accompany them singing the national anthems. The Honour Guard is number 105, City of Mackay, Australian Air Force Cadets. The Australian Air Force Cadets have performed this duty since the memorial was unveiled on the 11th of May 1992. The official guests arriving by World War II jeep will be escorted to their seats by the host officers. Colonel Juris Jansons, USAF, representing United States of America and United States 5th Air Force. Mr. Rod Manning, his editorial in October 1991 prompted action to build this memorial. And Mackay Regional Councillor Justin England, representing Mackay Regional Council. Adrian Van Molenbroek, who served on the committee to build the memorial. The Honour Guard will now be mounted at the memorial. For those who are able, please stand or stand for those who are unable to rise. Parade and Guard commanders, please mount the guard. Would you please remain standing and join in singing the anthems of Australia and the United States of America, performed by the Tri-School Band and sung by Sue Benson. Saluting officers, maintain your salutes for both anthems according to protocol.
Australians, oh let us rejoice, oh we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for Stop. Do it again. Eyes on me, please. 3. Fallon. 3. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Okay, 8A, and upon RD8A, and upon RDS on R. Okay, and at A.
Please be seated. We welcome our official guests to today's ceremony. Mackay Regional Councillor Justin Englert, representing Mayor Williamson and Mackay Regional Council. Julianne Gilbert, member for Mackay. Jason Costigan, member for Whitsundays. Guest speaker, Colonel Juris Jansons, USAF, Director of Operations and Plans, US 5th Air Force, from Yokota Air Base, Japan. Professor Robert Cutler and Mrs. Sarah Cutler from Washington, D.C. Mr. Luke Taylor, President of Mackay RSL Sub-Branch Incorporated. Mr. Rod Manning, former editor of the Daily Mercury. Rod's passion, articles and editorials over many years were the catalyst of this fine structure. It has become well known to the US 5th Air Force and the US Army. The US Army will hold a parallel ceremony in Washington, D.C. on the 14th of June. The memorial and these annual ceremonies are appreciated by relatives of the casualties. Mr. Adrian Van Woodrow and Mr. Nev Allen, who served on the committee that created this fine structure. And I'm Gary Minter, your Master of Ceremonies. I'd like to make special mention of Miss Vivian Deacon. With her late husband, Robert, Vivian raised these flags from 1992 for about 16 years until their health declined. They received a US Congressional Award in 2005 for their dedication. Miss Laurie Ledden, who served on the Bakers Creek Memorial Committee since 2002. Australian Air Force Cadets. These young Australians are volunteers who have the courage to wear military uniforms to represent Australian Defence Force. Aaron Gray from Mackay District Pipe Band and a host officer, Jim Fredrickson, along with colleagues in military uniforms, has assisted these ceremonies on many occasions. We've got apologies from former Senator, the Honourable Santo Santoro, who has worked from a distance for more than 15 years. Mackay Regional Mayor Greg Williamson, who is away on duty, Squadron Leader Jeff Strange, who is away flying with cadets. Today, Mackay Tiger Moth Museum will perform a flyby salute for the fallen US warriors by one or two 1943 model Tiger Moth biplanes at 3:30, and that time will be determined by commercial airlines and other factors. So please don't be concerned if it turns up a bit late. I'd like to invite Mackay Regional Councillor Justin Englert to give the welcoming address.
Colonel Jansons, Professor Robert Cutler, Mr. Sarah Cutler, welcome to Winter in Mackay. President RSL Luke Taylor, Executive and members, thank you for organising this ceremony today. Member for Whitsunday, Jason Costigan, member for Mackay, Julian Gilbert, Acting Mayor, Councillor Karen May. The Mayor, Greg Williamson, gives his sincerest apologies. He's asked Councillor May and myself to represent Council on his behalf today. At short notice, he's travelling to the US on a trade mission that might ultimately provide our communities with economic opportunities and lead to a greater quality of life to some in our communities that are currently behind the rest of us. We are able to travel and trade and seek greater quality of life as a result of the contributions and sacrifices made by those who came before us. Some of those who have ensured our freedoms are here with us today, others we will remember today. 75 years ago, 41 soldiers came to Mackay for 10 days leave after defending Australia and the world in New Guinea. At the end of their leave, they would return to New Guinea to continue their mission, but they never made it. 2 minutes after takeoff, their B-17 Flying Fortress crashed and killed 40 of the soldiers and left the last crippled until he passed later in 2004. I personally once had the privilege of serving in the Royal Australian Air Force. It seems like a long time ago now. By the end of my time there, I was served with Air Transportable Telecommunications Unit, now called 1 Combat Communications Squadron. I myself spent many hours sitting on runways in Caribous and C-130 Hercules, waiting for takeoff, excited, anxious, depending on what we're up to that day. I wonder if these men did the same things that we did as we loaded onto the aircraft, found our spots and waited for takeoff. Now knowing the story of these soldiers, I'm embarrassed to have recounted over the years the difficult and uncomfortable conditions that I personally experienced on military aircraft. The reality is that the aircraft I flew in at least had canvas seats. They were bigger, and after takeoff you could move around and find a spot on top of a crate or in a vehicle and be relatively comfortable for the duration. These soldiers were sitting on a wooden floor in the aircraft with a rope tied across them as a seatbelt. I wonder, as they waited for takeoff, did they talk to each other about the same things we did? Family and loved ones, where they went, what they saw, what beer was the best and what was the worst, news of the world, where they were going to land and where to from there. How do I find myself reflecting on the lives and last moments of these soldiers from so long ago? Why are we here today to remember them? It's because of the great community that we all live in. It's because we have the great people in our community that remind us of who we are and what's important to us. This memorial is a community-led initiative that will ensure that these soldiers will always be remembered. It is the work of people such as Rod Manning, Adrian Van Molenbroek, Nev Allen, Jeff Strange, Greg Williamson, Col Benson. There are many others that help plan, effect and maintain this memorial. And we thank them as we remember those for who this memorial is intended. I'll close by quoting Victoria Cross recipient Keith Payne, who said when closing the 2005 ceremony, "For a while they were Australians when they were interned in our soil." I welcome you all so together we can remember those soldiers who perished so far from home.
Thank you, Councillor Englert. Please welcome our guest speaker, Colonel Juris Jansons. Colonel Juris Jansons is an F-16 fighter pilot with the United States 5th Air Force. Colonel Jansons has flown from his base in Japan to represent the United States of America and US 5th Air Force. These soldiers were serving with the 5th Air Force when they gave their lives for their country and ours 75 years ago.
Before I start my prepared remarks, I'd like to say a personal thanks to everyone who organized and participated in this ceremony. You've done an amazing job. I had no idea what to expect, and I'm blown away and personally touched, so thank you. I stand here to represent 5th Air Force in place of my commander, Lieutenant General Martinez, who deeply regrets that he could not attend. For my part, I am grateful, humbled, and honored to help mark the 75th anniversary of the crash of B-17 tail number 402072, assigned to my parent organization, 5th Air Force. The crash on June 14th took the lives of 40 Americans and changed the lives of their families and friends forever. Yet there is more to this story than just that day. There is a time before the tragedy that give us insight into the past, and the ripples after that day that suggest why we are stronger together. Before that day, the story has American airmen traveling to the other side of the world to join the front lines in a global conflict, traveling to far-off and exotic Australia, a place where some Americans wondered, in the days before simple Google searches, whether the inhabitants spoke English. Before that day, the story has the creation of my organization, 5th Air Force, here in Australia, and it's partnering with the Royal Australian Air Force Command. Before that day, American airmen found themselves fighting side by side with Australians who did indeed speak English. The American airmen supported the Australian ground forces, the diggers, and vice versa. The Australian airmen defended American airmen, and vice versa. In a very real sense, the Americans and Australians walked or flew through the valleys of death together. They shared the wartime hardships and built bonds that only comrades in arms can understand. Before that day, there were other bonds growing. When Americans were given a respite from the front lines, they found themselves here in Mackay, welcome, diverted, and healed by their Australian hosts. This was a time before long-distance phone calls, Skype, or FaceTime, so being welcomed here was being home. On June 14th, the fate of 40 Americans on board 402072 was sealed. They would not return to the front. And so the ripples began. The sad news flowed back to the United States, where mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters learned of their loss. But the ripples also echoed here in Mackay. Mackay went into mourning too. The artful editorial in the Daily Mercury, penned by an author who was unable to write the specifics because of operational security, reflected on the gallant sons who had gone forth to defend their homeland, and lamented that these young men, who were adopted into the homes and hearts of our people, leaving an aching void by their passing. The ripples continued after the war's last shot. The witnesses of the crash sharing remembrances of the young men and preserving artifacts. And as more generations of Americans and Australians faced the shadows of death together in Korea and Vietnam, the depth of and reach of the ripples expanded. The stories of the crash passed from parents to children. Then came a moment when those echoes risked passing into legend and evaporating with the passing of time. But instead, the people of Mackay envisioned and then realized the monument beside me, the monument amplifying the connection with the past. And then amazingly, the ripples grew stronger and stronger. Over 26 years of participation by the people of Mackay in the annual memorial here, each year reinforcing the story with younger generations and reinforcing the connection with their adopted sons. And this monument became a gathering place for the Americans and the Australians. It became a tangible manifestation of the letters and communiques from Australia to the U.S. that helped fill in the censored holes for the families of 402072, bringing information and closure. Going so far as to echo and drive the creation of a counterpart memorial in Arlington Cemetery in the United States. And during the last 3 days of my life, I have been swept away by the power of those echoes. My time here has forced me to see 5th Air Force as more than just a headquarters in Japan. It has reaffirmed my sense of 5th Air Force's connection to Australia. It has also forced me to think about these airmen and their role in the defense of Australia, and thereby recognize how this part of the world is in the very DNA of the United States Air Force. During my time with the Pantons of the 35th Fighter Squadron, the night-flying Black Widows of the 421st, the fabulous Fiends of the 36th, and the Headhunters of the 80th, we quoted the history and told the stories of our predecessors in the Pacific. We strove to emulate their initiative, their courage, and their perseverance. And reflecting on the shared comradeship of 5th Air Force and Royal Australian Air Force Command has deepened my reverence for the Australian military members with whom I have served. At every grave challenge around this globe, I have found them standing side by side with us. But even more than that, I stand here amazed at the multiple generations in front of me who have not forgotten their adopted American sons. I am humbled at how you were there before, during, and ever after June 14, 1943. And I know at my very core that we will be standing together in front of all future challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Jansons. I now invite Mackay RSL Padre Jim Brown to read a passage from the Bible and offer prayers. Following the prayer, would you please stand if you're able? We might move straight to the hymn if we can. We'll move straight to the hymn. Abide by me.
What you doing?